Welcome to the battlefield of brains, where strategy meets chaos and every move burns with intensity. Watch grandmasters clash, pieces fall, and legends rise. Niculescu kicks off the war with e4, a proud white pawn marching like a drummer boy to the center, waving the flag of aggression. The battlefield trembles as lines open for bishops and queen, and white declares, "I came here to fight." Ein, Nguyen, and C. Nakamura, never one to bow, hurls back c5, the Sicilian defense. His pawn lunges forward like a black tank crashing into the arena. This is no polite handshake, it's a sucker punch straight to the gut of White's plan. White brings out the knight, the trusty warhorse galloping to f3, eyeing the dark pawn on d4's horizon. The crowd whispers, "This steed smells blood," and the Sicilian battleground is about to ignite. Black calmly fortifies with zix, like hammering down a shield wall before the cavalry charge. Hikaru smirks. He knows the dragon or Najdorf fire could emerge at any moment. Niculescu strikes immediately with d4, blasting open the central gate. The pawn rushes headlong into enemy territory, a kamikaze charge demanding violence. White wants chaos, and chaos he shall get. The black c5 pawn gleefully chomps down d4, first blood of the game. The crunch echoes like steel on bone. Nakamura is here for the body count, and he starts early. White's knight avenges the fallen pawn, swooping onto d4 with a swift strike. Steel hoofs clatter as it reclaims the center. Niculescu bellows, "Your pawn was tasty, but now my horse owns this battlefield." Handle be muni, pensechi, emasta, in wo kurelu, or still de. Black counters by releasing his knight, a shadowy beast leaping to f6, pointing its spear directly at f4. The threat is sharp, and suddenly White's proud pawn feels exposed, like a soldier standing in the open. Another knight emerges for White, galloping to c3 to back up his brother in arms. The two warhorses form a duo, glaring at Black's forces with fire in their eyes. The White cavalry has arrived. And Hikaru plays a6. The Najdorf twist. The pawn creeps forward like a sly assassin, preventing White's knight from daring to jump onto b5. Subtle but deadly, the stage is set for fireworks. White now lashes out with the bishop to g5, pinning Black's knight like nailing an enemy soldier to a wall. The pressure is on. Niculescu hisses, "Your knight belongs to me, Hikaru." En ho is en pen. Black calmly shields with Essex, snapping his fingers as the bishop's threat dulls. Like raising an iron wall, Hikaru locks down the center. He's not panicking. He's sharpening his blade for later. Here comes White's pawn storm. 4 marches forward like a battering ram, ready to smash through the barricades. The White army screams war cries, This is no quiet positional game. This is bloodlust. Black retreats with b7, humbly pulling the bishop back. But don't be fooled, it's a coiled snake. The pin is broken, and now the knight at f6 breathes again, hungry for revenge. White queen slides to f3, a lethal sniper taking aim at black's kingside dt toriste. Oh no ruin. And vain, capridit karan, ewawa niri. Her gaze pierces down the diagonal, whispering, I see you, and I will strike. Niculescu leans forward. This is war poetry. Hikaru mirrors with qc7, placing his queen on a dark throne, reinforcing the f5 square, and glaring back at white's queen like a rival mafia boss across the street. Two monarchs, one alleyway, tension explodes. White castles long, boom. The king sprints to safety on the queen side, while the rook roars into action. It's the signal of an all-out pawn storm on the king side. Niculescu screams, let the flames begin. Black develops his knight to d7, steadying the formation like a second shield wall. Hikaru mutters, bring it. The air grows tense. The storm is circling both kings. And here it comes. White launches g4 with a roar, pawns marching like berserkers down the kingside. Knock, Niculescu shouts. I'm coming for your king's skull. The arena shakes with applause. Nakamura japs back with h6, a cheeky poke at the bishop on g5. It's a dare. Go on, hit me if you can. The bishop must decide, retreat or strike. The tension is unbearable. White's bishop tiptoes back to h4, like an assassin refusing to retreat completely. He glares at the knight on f6, still threatening, still whispering, I will cut your head when the time is right. Nindianai. Boom. Hikaru swings the hammer with g5, chasing down that bishop like a raging barbarian with a torch. The kingside is exploding into fire. No one's castle will remain intact. Niculescu accepts the challenge. His foul pawn chomps black's pawn with savage hunger. Blood sprays, the line opens, and white's rook is licking its lips at the newly opened f-file. Hikaru slyly tucks his knight to h7, slinking like a rogue assassin circling white's forces. It looks defensive, but watch out. This beast is plotting a counterstrike on g5 or f6. And white throws a grenade, pawn to g6. Kaboom! This serious the need to make 10. Hit shall niwen. The pawn storms forward like a berserker with no fear of death, slamming straight into black's pawn shield. Hikaru's king's side is bleeding. But Hikaru hits back. His knight leaps to a5, thrusting into the center like a warlord waving a bloody axe. He glares at white's queen, bishops and pawns all at once. One knight, 1,000 threats. White detonates the g-file by sacrificing his pawn with check. Takis Nakamura. Niculescu screams, as the pawn delivers a death blow to Feven. The black king flinches as the board shakes. Hikaru calmly snuffs it out. His knight on Hess7 leaps in, gobbling the pawn like chewing gum. The sacrifice fizzles, but now, the knight looks fat and happy, on f7, daring white to strike harder. White's bishop sharpens its blade and slices the black bishop on s7 clean off the map. A brutal execution. Niculescu smirks. One less of your bishops, 2 eyes gouged out. Hanina, indicates any order but sen, indicate. Nakamura wastes no time. His queen slithers in and reclaims the bishop's soul. She's furious now, glaring across the board with fire in her crown. White has awakened the dragon. White queen slides to g3. A venomous viper aiming directly at black's kingside wounds. The message is clear. Your monarch bleeds, Hikaru, and I'm the executioner. But Hikaru laughs like a villain. He throws a queen check. Qj5 cuts into white's kingside like a dagger. The hunter becomes the hunted, and the audience gasps. White snarls back. Queen takes queen. No more games of staring and taunting. Niculescu rips off the black queen's head with a single brutal slash. Blood on the crown. The knight avenges her. Nakamura's loyal steed chomps down the white queen. The horse stands tall, proud, and scarred, like a warrior screaming. The fight is far from over. And in. White rallies the bishop to d3, pointing like a war cannon at h7 and g6. The bishop's eyes gleam with divine fire, ready to scorch the enemy knight into ashes. Black's knight retreats to f5, strong and stubborn. It's like a gladiator in the arena, shield raised, sword swinging, daring white to step forward. White swings a rook to f1, placing it on the open file, like a siege engine, ready to pound the castle walls. The battlefield hums with danger. Everyone feels the storm. Hikaru shuffles his king to a7, awkward, but safe for now. The black monarch crawls out of danger like a wounded general hiding behind the lines. The crowd jeers at his cowardice. White knight springs back to f3, regrouping like a disciplined cavalry commander. He eyes f5. He eyes g5. The knight is sharpening his blade for a precise decapitation. And Hikaru doesn't wait. His knight charges and cuts down white's knight on f3. A savage horse duel ends with one rider trampled, and the black knight stands victorious. White doesn't hesitate. Rook snatches the knight on f3 with the force of a guillotine. The sound echoes like an axe falling in a crowded square. Niculescu roars, My rook drinks horse blood tonight. Nejeldua. Hikaru calmly develops his bishop to d7, as if shrugging off the massacre. The bishop stands like a priest holding a blade, ready to bless the battlefield with more blood. White doubles rooks on the f-file, two massive war machines rolling side by side, ready to bulldoze everything in their path. The audience feels the ground shake. This is heavy artillery. Black answers with his own doubling. Two dark rooks line up like twin battering rams. Hikaru smirks. If you want a duel, Niculescu, I'll match your firepower shot for shot. Ingen. In der Seoicho, in Deste, Abudieste Pennen, and listed an Station. White throws in h4, another infantryman charging the front. The pawn screams with madness as it runs toward the king's side, torch in hand, ready to burn the defenses alive. Black places his rook on gate, a gun turret swiveling directly at White's kingside pawns. Hikaru's fortress may be cracked, but his cannons are locked and loaded. White bolsters his pawns with g3, knitting his defenses like a soldier raising a shield. Niculescu knows, attack is glorious, but without armor, even heroes die quickly. Black pushes his bishop to chicks, a long-range sniper scoping down the diagonal. From the darkness, that bishop's glare could skewer White's king at the slightest slip. White knight retreats to e2, a tactical reposition. He's like a seasoned warrior pulling back to sharpen his blade, ready to leap into a deadlier square when the timing is right. Hikaru slams f5 on the board. The pawn surges forward like a battering ram smashing the gates of Troy. Black claims the center with sheer brute force. The white knight bounces back to c3, eyes flashing. He challenges Black's newfound pawn pride, sneering, "Enjoy your center while you can, because I'm coming." None. Black advances b5, pushing pawns like tanks across the queenside battlefield. Nakamura's strategy is clear. Crush Niculescu under relentless steel wheels. White responds with a3, setting a trap. The pawn looks harmless, but it's a caltrop waiting for those black tanks to roll too far forward. Subtle, deadly. Black escalates immediately, pawn to f5, doubling down on his flank assault. The board rumbles. Hikaru's army is tearing down the queenside walls brick by brick. Niculescu strikes back with a thunderclap. Rook storms to f6, slicing into Black's territory like a warhammer. The rook is in Hikaru's face, spitting sparks. Unfazist. Hikaru pushes b4 Turchtning. The pawn marches like a suicide bomber toward White's knight. Black doesn't care if it dies, it's the explosion that matters. White's pawn on a3 lunges and devours the b4 invader. The crunch is loud, and White's can't breathe for a second. One tank destroyed. But Hikaru immediately recaptures with his other pawn, like reinforcements rushing in over the corpse of their comrade. The b-file is a graveyard, but black owns it now. White's knight retreats to At2, awkward but alive. It looks cornered, but remember, a cornered beast fights with fangs bared. Niculescu is planning something dark. Black rook slides to bait, a menacing cannon staring directly at White's queenside. The rook growls, "Your king may hide, but my bullets find everything." White pushes B, a desperate soldier plugging a hole in the wall. The pawn trembles, but stands firm, shouting, "Not one step further, Hikaru." Inyanjes, Kamurun, und Etchiges, Untersistand, Ananda 9. Black unleashes RJ4. His rook leaps forward like a predator, jaws wide open, lunging at White's kingside pawns. The spectators scream. This is an ambush in plain daylight. White counters with RHX, his rook diving behind enemy lines. It points straight at the Black King's fortress, whispering, "Every wall you build, I'll tear down with fire." Boom. Black's bishop slices the pawn on e4 clean in half. A holy warrior turned executioner, the bishop cackles. "Your center is mine now." Nenori. Niculescu doesn't let it stand. Bishop takes bishop, blood for blood. The clash of steel rings loud and White shouts, "One eye for one eye." Now. The knight crashes back onto e4, skewering White's bishop without mercy. Hikaru's seat chomps down like a warhorse trampling bones under hoof. The field reeks of death. Check. Check. White's rook jumps to h7, harassing Black's king with fury. Niculescu yells like a berserker, "Come out and face me, coward." Menuka, the Black King marches to e6, boldly stepping forward like a general leading from the front. He's wounded, but Hikaru sneers, "I don't hide, I conquer." Nz. White's rook lashes again with RHX, smashing the drums of war. Niculescu is hammering Hikaru's king like a relentless war drummer, pounding terror into enemy hearts. The king ducks back to 7, retreating like a slippery commander evading arrows. He refuses to die. This monarch is dancing in blood, but still breathing. White knight chomps the pawn, on b4. Finally, the cornered horse bursts free, ripping a tank apart. The crowd roars as White claws back material. But Hikaru snaps back. The rook devours the knight instantly. No mercy, no delay. The White cavalry is crushed beneath the Black machine. Check again. White's rook on f7 slams into Black's ranks, screaming, "I'll never stop stabbing your king." The audience is on edge. Will this bleeding monarch survive? The Black King shuffles to chicks, walking a razor's edge. He is naked in the battlefield, every step surrounded by blades. Hikaru plays with fire. White rook dots back to h6, circling like a hawk over prey. The twin rooks coordinate, fangs bared, preparing for a killing net. But Hikaru's rook cuts through to d4, swinging like a butcher's cleaver. The rook is ready to carve open White's soft underbelly. White rook slides to h2, guarding his king and regrouping. Like a warrior retreating into the shadows, he sharpens his dagger for the next ambush. Black Knight leaps to c3, a thunderous arrival. The steed roars onto White's territory, aiming at forks, skewers, and chaos. The ground shakes under its hooves. White King edges to b2, fleeing the knight's glare. He looks terrified, clutching his crown, whispering, "Not today, death, not today, not today." Oh, and it. Check! Hikaru's knight lunges to done with a savage fork, spearing the White King and rook at once. The crowd howls. The Black Knight has become a one-piece army, dripping with power. White King sidesteps to cone, ducking away from the knight's deadly fork. He stumbles, clutching his robe as if whispering, "Please, not my rook, not yet." Bummed. But Hikaru's knight isn't done. It pounces to e3, fangs dripping, threatening another ambush. The horse is everywhere at once, a ghostly assassin haunting Niculescu's king. White rook blocks on d2, a desperate wall against the Shadow Knight. The rook slams its shield down and yells, "You want my king? You'll have to kill me first." Tandimas okleinen, ikili, anoro, hennisro, isidavisi, ele, alkli. And Hikaru accepts. The rook smashes through White's rook on d2, like a battering ram exploding the gates. Wood splinters, steel bends, White's fortress crumbles. White King himself steps up, grabbing the black rook with trembling hands. He executes it personally, blood dripping from his crown. This monarch fights like a cornered wolf. Check! Black Knight delivers a crushing blow on f1, eating a pawn with a savage grin. The king is slashed again, screaming as Hikaru's knight carves its initials in the battlefield. White King staggers to d3, running deeper into the flames. He's no longer hiding. He's sprinting straight through the war zone, dodging arrows, refusing to kneel. The knight devours another pawn on g3, feasting like a glutton at a banquet of souls. Hikaru's beast is unstoppable, its mouth full of fire and bone. White rook strikes back on h6, tearing down a black pawn. Finally, Niculescu screams through the smoke, "I'll take your men piece by piece, even if I burn with them." Black king creeps to c5, brazen and bare-chested. He's out in the open, but strutting like a gladiator. Go ahead, try me. I'm unbreakable. Niñanis. Pensirsi. Isyomonden. White rook shifts to h3, repositioning like a sniper finding a new perch. The rook's barrel glints under the firelight. Soon, it will shoot again. The knight swings to e4, stamping the ground like thunder. It stares white's king in the eye, whispering, "Every square you step on belongs to me." Many. White rook creeps to f5, like an assassin sneaking around the battlefield. He eyes the pawns hungrily, waiting for one clean strike to tip the war. Hikaros, king struts to d5, unbelievably bold, like a mad general walking across a minefield while bombs explode. The crowd gasps. This is insanity. Check! White pawn slams forward to c4, exploding under black's king's feet. Dirton smoke fly high. Niculescu shouts, "Step carefully, Hikaru. This ground is cursed." The king calmly retreats to e6, brushing off the dust like a man unfazed by grenades. Hikaru smirks. "Is that all you've got?" Nainus. White king lunges forward and devours the black knight on e4. The spectators erupt. The nightmare horse is slain. Niculescu's king, dripping with blood, howls like a berserker. But Hikaru reloads. Rook slides to bait, pointing its cannon straight at white's king. The black artillery growls, "Slay my knight? Fine. I'll bury you in cannon fire." Check again. Check. White rook storms to h6, stabbing at the black king with a roar. Niculescu won't stop. Every breath is another blade. Black king coolly ducks to d7, dancing through the flames. He's wounded, hunted, cursed, but he refuses to fall. Hikaru's monarch is a demon in armor, laughing at death itself. White rook jabs again from 7. Check! Niculescu is pressing every button left. The rook screams, "Dance, king, dance!" Nestin. Black king slides back to e6, smirking like a general dodging bullets. Hikaru shrugs, "You can't touch me." Nesiste. Yeah. White rook gobbles a pawn on 7, a quick snack to stay alive. Niculescu's rook is a hungry wolf, scavenging in ruins. Black rook storms to b2, aiming its cannon at white's weak pawns. Hikaru is tightening the noose, artillery ready to bombard. Check again. White rook fires from chicks, pounding Hikaru's king with desperate shells. Niculescu refuses to kneel. The king dances away to f7. Hikaru just smirks, brushing ash off his shoulders. Untouchable. White rook slides to a6, a lone sniper crawling to the flank. The message is clear. I still have bullets. Black pawn charges to g4, like a soldier with dynamite strapped to his chest. Hikaru wants destruction. He doesn't care about bodies anymore. White king charges forward to Fawa. He's not hiding. He's leading the charge, crown dripping blood, eyes wild. Black rook drops to b4, slamming the path shut like a steel wall. Hikaru's rook roars. Nobody passes here. White king storms to g5, mad with fury. The crowd gasps. Niculescu's king is deep in enemy land, a berserker screaming in flames. Boom! Black rook devours the c4 pawn. Density. Hikaru's rook chews through soldiers like breakfast. Check again. White rook slams in, from f6. Niculescu's last warrior swings wildly. Fall, demon king. Black king calmly steps to a7, like a monster brushing off wounds. He just won't die. White rook scurries back to a6, desperate for air. Niculescu is sweating, his hands shaking. The g-pawn advances, monstrous and unrelenting. Hikaru's pawn growls. Make way for the coronation. White king slams to 5, standing in front of the pawn like a human shield. He screams, "You'll pass over my corpse." Check. Black rook blasts from c5, a cannonball to the chest. Niculescu's king coughs blood but stays upright. The king stumbles back to f4, refusing to collapse. He is pure defiance. Black pawn storms to g2, one step from glory. Hikaru's soldier is seconds from promotion. Its helmet gleams in the firelight. White rook drops to a1, aiming across the board like a sniper desperate for the last bullet. Black rook swings to c2, protecting the pawn like a bodyguard. Hikaru growls, "Try me now." "Oh, man, Chesini?" White king leaps to g3, lunging at the pawn with a scream. Niculescu throws his body into the line of fire. But Hikaru hammers him. Black pawn advances to f4 with check. Another gut punch to the weary king. White king stumbles to h2, half dead, clutching his chest. He is breathing fire but barely standing. Black pawn marches to f3, roaring with bloodlust. Now 2 pawns are ready to crown themselves kings, unstoppable. White king flees to Gon, but the field is lost. Niculescu has given everything, but Hikaru's army is a black tide swallowing the board. The game ends, a brutal, bloody masterpiece. I'll end the video here. Please give me a like and subscribe to my channel. I'll keep finding the best and newest videos to share with you. Thank you so much, and I wish you all happiness and good health. 오늘 내년, 2월 5일 맛시계판, festies.